Hello, everyone. NFL Week 5 is mostly in the books. One game left to go tonight. Welcome to the Monday morning episode of Stacking the Box. Sterling Holmes just got married 2 days ago, so we decided to give him the day off. Only today. He's going to be back Wednesday. So joining me, Mike Luciano. What's going on, Mike?
Doing pretty good. Football team notwithstanding. But other than that, I'm happy to be here. Hope Sterling's having a good time, and let's have a great show.
Yeah, we are, of course, going to talk about your football team. I'm sure you're referring to the New York Jets, who did not have a great performance. We're going to talk about them. But first of all, before we get into it, because as always, on Monday, we are going to recap all the games so far. Then we're going to finish off the show previewing Monday Night Football tonight, which should be a good one. Saints against Chiefs. But before we get into that, it is the greatest time of year again. If you don't know, football's back. We're 5 weeks into it. You should know by now that football is back, and it's here to stay until February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite players' stats. I have used Underdog throughout the season. I'm still thinking about the time that I was a Devin Singletary carry away from winning my Underdog lineup. I have not yet made my Underdog lineup for Monday Night Football between the Chiefs and Saints. I got a little bit of a late start this morning, so I will be making that lineup shortly. And I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go lower on Patrick Mahomes passing yards. I'll tell you that much. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple to use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code Stacking the Box, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That is Stacking the Box, all one word. So use promo code Stacking the Box to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Mike, before we get into Sunday's games, obviously the last show of Stacking the Box was on Wednesday, so I have not been able to talk about my Atlanta Falcons, who I think we're going to start renaming him Cardiac Kirk. Is that what we got to do? Because I'll tell you what, I'm happy that we're 3-2, Mike, but I can't survive a full season of football where every Falcons game comes down to the last minute.
That's always the Falcons, though. You made it this far. At least they're winning sometimes now.
It's true. Falcons games do always come down to the final couple of plays, the final drive. And yeah, you're right. To be fair, most of the time the Falcons are on the wrong side of those. So it is nice to be on the right side of them. It's nice to win exciting games. It's fun to win exciting games. But my ask for the Falcons this coming week, we hit the road to take on the Panthers. Obviously, we're going to preview that game on Wednesday's episode. But my ask would just be to win comfortably, which I don't think should be a big ask against the Carolina Panthers. Can't we just win by 10 points?
Well, a fan of my team, I think you know what can happen sometimes when you ask the football gods for favors and then look what you get.
That's true.
I feel I don't want to be like a wet blanket and caution Falcons fans after a 3-2 start where Kirk Cousins just threw for 500 yards. But there are two concerning things that Falcons fans I think might need to tone down the enthusiasm a little bit. Number one, Todd Bowles basically didn't change anything defensively. He ran entirely zone. Kirk Cousins just diced him apart the entire game. Very basic, very rigid, didn't change anything. That is as easy a pitching catch as any quarterback's going to have. Now, Kirk Cousins is good, and he was able to do it, but I'd imagine more defenses will be, A, healthier and be a little bit more creative than that. And number two, Baker Mayfield was really slicing the Falcons up for most of that game. And the secondary is supposed to be the strength of this team with Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons and A.J. Terrell. That's supposed to be the strength. And I feel like if Todd Bowles didn't just have a complete disaster class where he allowed over almost 600 total yards, I don't know. Maybe that could have gone the other way. But if they find a way to clean up the secondary, which it's Carolina, should be much easier to slow them down than Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, which is a weird sentence that we might not have been able to say a couple of years ago. then I think I'll believe more in Atlanta in terms of their long-term aspirations.
Well, allow me to counterpoint your point, Mike. How about the fact that you talk about how Todd Bowles didn't make any adjustments and he just ran out the same defense all game? How about the fact the Falcons only allowed 6 points in the second half? Did they not play better defensively in the second half? Were there not maybe some significant halftime adjustments that they made?
They absolutely did, but also Tampa barely had the ball. Now that's credit to Atlanta, but I would caution fans against looking at a 200-yard, 3-touchdown performance from Baker Mayfield and saying, you know what, I'm proud of our defense that game. Because they needed a couple really lucky breaks to get in position to get that win. Now enjoy that win, but I need to see maybe 1 or 2 more really convincing wins before I go, all right, you know what, Falcons can be a legit noisemaker in the NFC.
Yeah, listen, I think I'm kind of realistic about the Falcons, and it was one of my concerns heading into that game was their lack of depth in the secondary. Sure, they have Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell, but their second corner is Mike Hughes. So when you're playing against a Tampa Bay team that is 2 elite wide receivers, that's going to be a problem at times. I was encouraged. Yeah, Tampa Bay didn't have the ball a ton in the second half, but they didn't score a touchdown either. So I was encouraged by some second half adjustments that at least slowed Tampa Bay down. And yeah, I also don't think Kirk Cousins is going to be throwing 509 yards and 4 touchdowns every single game, 42 completions on 58 attempts. But it's just nice to see that the Falcons can win games like that. We're alive. We're like now minus 200 to make the playoffs this season. So we should at least, I think, be considered a playoff team, especially if we can just, I think actually as easy as this game should be for the Falcons and Panthers game, once again, they're going to talk about it more Wednesday. I actually think that's kind of a true test because every game we played so far has been against a relatively good team. I think really a sign of a good playoff team should be that we should be able to beat the Panthers handedly. If we can beat the Panthers, which are clearly an inferior team, beat them by double digits or maybe even, a touchdown, and it's kind of comfortable, then I think we're legitimate. If we struggle with the Panthers, then I'm concerned.
Especially after Andy Dalton just really fell off a cliff hard against the Bears. Like, he was better than Bryce Young, and he got that boost. But, man, they looked as vulnerable as ever.
Yes.
Against Chicago. So you should roll in this game. Now, the Falcons should have rolled a lot of other games that they haven't won in the past with Kirk Cousins and without him. But let's see. Maybe things are different now because Raheem Morris is here.
Let's talk about your team.
Oh, God.
What are your thoughts?
Okay, so in a vacuum, if you went into the game beforehand saying that they lost by 6 against that Vikings team, I would say, all right, you know what? Fine. And this defense, I know they only gave up 13 points the last 2 weeks, but, I mean, they lost to a team where Bo Nix had 60 yards passing, and that Patriots team they beat didn't have a functional NFL line. So the fact that they played that well against the Vikings, I'm like, you know what? You couldn't ask for any more defensive. Sam Darnold did not look good, at all. And the offense just melts down again. Rodgers, 3 picks. 2 of them he just threw right to people. Like, before that, he only had 1 interception this year, and it was like a deflection. And then he just has one of the worst games you'll ever see. Beyond 10 yards, beyond the line of scrimmage, he was 3 of 17 with 2 picks. Aaron Rodgers. So you're in this war. It's just like Zach Wilson, where you're like, why don't they throw the ball down the field more than they do when they can't? It's a nightmare.
Aaron Rodgers washed.
He's not, well, I guess define washed, because he's never going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's still better than most quarterbacks in this league. He's not going to be Aaron Rodgers again.
Has he lived up to the expectations of Jets fans through the first 5 games?
Oh, certainly no. But
do you think he has the ability to get to that level where he's living up to their expectations? Because right now, I mean, you even said it. Your words, not mine. It looks like a Zach Wilson offense right now.
Well, part of
the offense looks exactly the same as it did last year.
Part of it, too, is Jets fans, I think, expected him to fix everything by himself. And maybe last year he could have, and then we all remember what happened last year. That was welcome to hell. And then this year, he's been good mostly, and he's made a lot of good throws, and he's certainly leagues better than the play that they've had. But I don't think we're going to get Aaron Rodgers. So because of that, it looks worse because you have a name brand and he's struggling like this. And
so what is the problem with the Jets? The Jets have an elite defense. They have an offensive line that I was told all offseason was a revamped offensive line, but best offensive line they've had in years.
It is.
Is it an Aaron Rodgers issue? Is it a Nathaniel Hackett issue? Is it a quarterback issue? Or sorry, is it a coach issue?
Well,
what's going on with the Jets?
That's the problem, though, is everybody obviously is fire the coach. You know, Jets fans and New York fans are always fire the coach, right?
Right. But
this team is built beyond how it is on the field. It's built structurally to support Aaron Rodgers. This is a coach he wanted. This is an offensive coordinator only he wants and nobody else in the league wants, Hackett. So Jets fans are trying to act like, well, if we get rid of Hackett and Saleh but keep Rodgers, it'll be fine. It's like if they get rid of Hackett, Rodgers probably going to leave. So they can't really change anything offensively. Well, there's no creativity and motion. That's what Aaron Rodgers wants. He wants to get up to the line and kind of move guys around. He wants everything static. Now, Peyton Manning did it in Denver, and it worked. Tom Brady did it in Tampa Bay, and it worked. Not working here. And what's more frustrating, too, is everybody looked kind of confused. I think Mike Garofalo put out a report where he said basically Hackett gives Rodgers a choice of like 3 plays, and then he kind of picks one. That's kind of how it works. And I get that, you know, Rodgers is going to have influence. Every veteran quarterback's going to have influence over the offense. Kirk Cousins has influence probably over the Falcons offense.
Well,
but the problem is, like, he's also got to, like, be the quarterback too. You can't do old school Kenny Stabler calling your own plays and moving guys. Like, it's what he wants, but it's also too much on his plate. The problem then also is you can't really make changes because if you like get rid of a coach or something like that or make a structural change, you're basically admitting this whole experiment was a failure. So they kind of got to go down with the ship here. And it'll get better. Like, they'll win more games. They're not going to go 2-15, but they're not going to win a Super Bowl. If they get into the playoffs, it's going to be sneaking in at like 9-8 or 10-7, and they're going to get smacked by a really good team in the playoffs. That's not what fans were hoping for.
Do you think the Jets have a better than 50% chance of making the playoffs? Right now, I just checked their underdogs, plus 110. So that's like, what, 45% chance to make the playoffs?
I'd only say yes because New England is completely shot in the division. Miami will get Tua back, but I don't think they're going to really, even with Tua, they may dig themselves such a huge hole that I don't know if they're going to come back from that. And it's basically going to be the Jets or Buffalo for the AFC. The Bills just completely melted down yesterday. If the Jets win on Monday night next week, they'll be in first place after 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be like a wild card sneak-in team. They have a shot at the division, but that's only if they stay hot and the Bills keep losing. So that's the only reason that I'm going to give them more than 50% chances. Basically, it's 50-50 them or Buffalo for the division.
And the good news is for the Jets and their chances to make the playoffs, only 5 teams in the AFC have a winning record right now. The Bills at 3-2, Chiefs at 4-0, Broncos at 3-2, Ravens and Steelers at 3. Oh, maybe that's 6 teams. And then Texans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I miscounted. That's 6 teams. Still,
it's Monday.
Yeah, still, I mean, like, and most of those teams are 3-2. So the Jets are only like 1 game behind the Bills, 1 game behind the Ravens, 1 game behind the Steelers. So only the Chiefs and Texans are the only teams in the AFC that have 4 wins at this point in the season. So
the problem too is this is how cruel football is. You know, if Will Levis doesn't hand the Jets a free, you know, turnover in the red zone, maybe they're 1-4. If Greg Zuerlein makes a field goal against the Broncos and Mike Williams turns his head around at the end, makes that catch, maybe they're 4-1. Everything's different. That's
yeah. I mean, look no further than the Falcons season. We could be 5-0 right now. We could be 0-5 because almost every game has just come down to one play. So that is the NFL for you. That's why we watch it every Sunday.
A harsh mistress, that football.
Amen. I want to talk about the Browns because why have the Browns? I understand their investment in Deshaun Watson. I understand how much money they have tied up in him. But if you want to give your team any chance to succeed whatsoever, you have to bench him and go to Jameis Winston. I want to say a stat here that I have in front of me. This is yards per play. The Cleveland Browns right now, 3.8 yards per play. That is half a yard per play worse than the next worst team. The next worst team is the Patriots at 4.3. Now, half a yard might not sound like much, but a half a yard for every time the ball is snapped worse than the next worst offense in the NFL is inexcusable. This is the 2-time coach of the year who's coaching this team. They have weapons on offense. They have Amari Cooper. They have Jerry Jeudy. I know Nick Chubb hasn't been back yet, but still, I mean, Jerome Ford's a capable running back. The only reason this team is averaging 3.8 yards per play is because they're paying boatloads of money to their quarterback, who has off-field issues, to say the least. Yeah, Matthew in the chat, free Amari Cooper. What? Put Jameis in.
Well,
please.
Then you're going to pay Deshaun Watson $55 million as a backup quarterback.
Okay, right now you're paying him $55 million to be an embarrassment.
I mean, every data point you can prove will say unequivocally they should bench him, and they should. But this is kind of the bed they made, and they got to lay in it because it's you can't. They're not going away. Deshaun Watson is going to be on the team next year. He's probably going to be on the team the year after that. Nobody's going to want this deal. So, from a GM point of view, the only way that you could put Jameis in, because this isn't just a Stefanski decision. This is an organizational decision, I think, at this point. It's if you're willing to eat close to $100 million in 2 years. Now, that's a huge undertaking. And I know that it's getting to the point of no return where you got to consider it, even for a little bit. Like maybe start Jameis for a game or two just to see if he's got anything different, to see if it's really the offense or if it's just Watson. But
it's not getting better, Mike.
We've
seen enough. There's no more, he just has some rust, he needs to knock it off, he'll turn back to the old Deshaun Watson. There's no, he's a little bit banged up, he's just got to get healthy and he'll be all right. We've seen enough. And we've seen enough not only against good defenses, we've seen now enough against some of the worst defenses in the NFL. The Browns just played the Washington Commanders, who are a bottom 5 defense. The week before that, they played the Raiders, they didn't have Max Crosby, terrible defense. They played against the Giants a week before that, which credit to the Giants. Their defense is better than I thought they were going to be. Still, my points, the Jaguars a week before that, although it was a win, they scored 18 points. The Browns have actually probably had one of the easier schedules in the NFL when it comes to the defenses they've had to face. And once again, I'll say it, Mike, they're averaging 3.8 yards per play. I could go find 11 guys on the streets of New York who could put up 3.8 yards per play against those defenses.
I was looking back through NFL history because I was watching. So it was mostly at halftime. I can't find a guy. I know he not sat out the year, was suspended because of all the, I don't even need to go into what he did, but he takes the year he doesn't play, and then he's suspended coming back from that. Guys have sat out for a year and said, I've never seen a guy go from. Not only was he good in Houston, I mean, people legitimately thought he was going to be the Patrick Mahomes rival with the Texans. That's how good he was. And now he can't even play. I have no explanation for it. And I know he missed the year, but Aaron Rodgers blew out his Achilles. He looks better than this. And he's older, and that's an injury, not just sitting out. He looks slower. He looks more nervous. He looks unmotivated. The arm looks weaker too. It's really shocking. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
I did notice this past weekend, he does legitimately look slower. He used to be so fast back there.
Yeah, and he's so not slippery, like bigger either. Like, it's not like that. He just, I don't know. And there was a play too. I think there may have been a penalty of too many men on the field, but it was a 4th down and he just walked off the field while his offense was still out there. I'm like, man, he didn't even be there at this point.
3 straight Pro Bowls in Houston. He led his last season in Houston. He led the NFL in passing yards, 4,823. Led the NFL in yards per pass attempt, 8.9. In Cleveland, he's gone for yards per pass attempt, 6.5, 6.5, 4.9 this year. He's actually gotten worse as the seasons have gone on in Cleveland. This is by far the worst season so far.
I just don't. I want to find. There's got to be some logical data point that will help explain this. I can't figure it out.
I think he just gave up and stopped caring.
I guess he gave up. Like, he got the money. His team is bad. Home fans boo him. Away fans boo him, justifiably in both cases. I think he's really just quitting. He's cashing a check and quitting.
The Jacksonville Jaguars got their first win of the season this past week against the Indianapolis Colts. They're now, 1-4 on the season? What are your thoughts about the Jaguars as a whole, Mike? And what do you think they have a chance to kind of salvage this season, or despite the win, are they done? They play in London the next 2 weeks. This week's against the Bears. I forget who it is the week after in London, but 2 straight London games. Is their season alive whatsoever, or are they still done?
I think they're still done, but it was getting kind of lonely on Trevor Lawrence Defender Island, but he showed up this game. Maybe it's those old throwbacks with the gold. Maybe that's the secret. But looking at the Jaguars, I'm frustrated because I think even going across the league, all 32 teams, I think this is the most obvious case of get a new coach with fresh ideas in there and things will be better. And Doug Peterson's a good coach. Super Bowl. You can just slam that ring down on the table and say, I'm a good coach. But as what happened in Philly, he gets very outdated, I think, because he's very rigid. And again, I won a Super Bowl. I can coach, and I get that. But you could see right now that they need some new voice in there because, they have they paid Joshua Hines-Allen. They paid Eric Armstead. They have Brian Thomas Jr., who looks really good. Travon Walker is not as good as Aidan Hutchinson, but he looks like a good defensive player. Lawrence is obviously extended starting next year. ETN, that they have guys there, but something's not clicking. And I know that Lawrence was struggling earlier. And I know the offensive line was just getting whooped, and the Colts defense was A, bad, and B, missing all their good guys. But it's nice for them to get a win because I think that the demise of Trevor Lawrence was kind of exaggerated by, I think, people who were a little bummed he's not generational. He's just good. So I think people are looking to tear him down a little bit, but I'm glad they showed some life because I think there's something there, but I don't think there'll be anything there playoff wise or AFC South wise until they get rid of Peterson.
Yeah, I didn't think the Jaguars were as bad as their 0-4 record, but I do got to say I am concerned about their defense because you mentioned, they have some pieces on defense, but this is also a team that's, allowing 7.7 yards per throw. Overall, they're allowing 6 yards per play, second worst in the NFL next to the Rams. So, yeah, Trevor Lawrence got off to a slow start. I did think he was going to have a breakout game against the Colts secondary, which he did. But now when I'm looking at the Jaguars, it's not Trevor Lawrence I'm concerned about. It's their defense, which has been a bottom 3 unit in the NFL through the first 5 weeks. So
which is surprising because it's surprising because they had Ryan Nielsen brought in as the defensive coordinator. He was with Atlanta last year. I thought he did a pretty good job. So I'm like, what happened, Ryan Nielsen?
Yeah, so something's going on with their defense there. That's what I'm keeping an eye on moving forward. Like I said, they play their first London game of the season here. Who is it they play the week after in London? Bears this week, and then Patriots the week after.
Oof. These international games this year, there's Jaguars, Patriots, and then they have Panthers, Giants in Germany.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, Panthers, Giants in Germany.
Like a NATO incident with that.
Speaking of teams whose seasons are potentially over, the Bengals now 1-4 as well after that close loss to the Ravens. Is their season over, Mike?
It is, and this one is more shocking too. Obviously, Burrow's been great. I'm not going to put this on Burrow. I know he had the interception in that game, but Bengals had a bunch of chances to win that game and lost it 3 separate ways, none of which involved Joe Burrow. I know they have this habit, Burrow too, of getting off to these slow starts. 0-2, 1-3, 1-4, and I think it finally caught up to them. I think that in that division, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, I think it's too tough to climb out of that hole. I don't know if they'll sneak into they basically got to go 9-3 the rest of the way, which that's tough. I don't really think that that's going to happen. Lou Anarumo on defense, he was getting head coaching interviews last cycle. Good defensive mind. He looks lost right now. And I know that guys are hurt, and I know it's a young defense with a bunch of kids on it, a bunch of, second-round picks that they've drafted over the last couple of years. A lot of them are starting now, but it shouldn't look like this. There's still holdovers from the Super Bowl team there. Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson. They have veterans that should not allow 41 points at home. That should not allow the Bengals to be 0-3 at home. And 0-3 at home with Joe Burrow probably playing as well as any quarterback in the league right now because Mahomes is struggling. And Josh Allen just went 9 of 30. You can make a case statistically Burrow's been the best this year. Hasn't mattered. 1-4.
Yeah, shout out to my guy 10P Kids in the chat, who I believe is my guy Practical Picks on Twitter. Fire Taylor, Bengals Falcons Super Bowl officially toast. Yeah, my friend, I think unfortunately our hopes and dreams of a Bengals Falcons Super Bowl died this weekend when the Ravens kicked that overtime field goal to beat the Bengals. It's all over.
Man, did they ever figure it out too, man? Baltimore. I thought they were done after 0-2, but Derrick Henry looks 28 years old. He looks great. Lamar Jackson, that was an MVP level game from Lamar Jackson. I don't know how in this, with the quarterback play around the league, how people can look at Lamar Jackson and nitpick, but they do. God, he's so good. He might win MVP again if he keeps this up.
I will say hand up. I've called, I think, for 4 seasons in a row, Derrick Henry like falling off a cliff, and he's just come out and looked younger every year. So I've been wrong about Derrick Henry now, probably 4. I think probably not 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I said Derrick Henry's going to fall off a cliff and he's going to be out of the league in a couple of years. I guess I just expected like another Todd Gurley who went from offensive player of the year to like out of the league in like 3 seasons. I expected that with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's looking as good as he's ever looked. So
Todd Gurley had arthritis. Derrick Henry doesn't. And
yeah, fair.
Derrick Henry.
Well, I mean, Todd Gurley's not the only example. There's been plenty of examples of running backs who like peak when they're like 26 and they're out of the league by 29. So
Gurley was just
especially guys who, I mean, the amount of carries Derrick Henry's had in his career too. Like Titans just ran him every single play. So shout out to Derrick Henry. I was wrong. He looks as good as ever.
10,000 career rushing yards, 100 career touchdowns. He's like Frank Gore, but better.
Yeah.
Where he just lasts forever.
Matthew, Bengals Falcons Super Bowl is never going to happen because Chiefs are 3-peating. We'll get to the Chiefs here, buddy. We'll get to them here shortly. What's wrong with the 49ers? Speaking of Super Bowl teams, 49ers were supposed to come into the season as the best team in the NFC. We're supposed to be, well, they were like heavy favorites to return to the Super Bowl for the second straight year. I'll give you my prediction of what's wrong with them, and it's not Brock Purdy. It's not the offense. It is the same issue that we just talked about with the Jaguars. It's the same issue that we just talked about with the Bengals, although not as extreme with the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, even their losses have been close losses, but their defense has been atrocious. They got rid of their defensive coordinator from last year, brought in the new guy who was supposed to fix their defense. Their defense is terrible, and I think did I hear that they lead the NFL in missed tackles? Did I hear that during the broadcast?
They might. Shanahan, that's what Robert Saleh was before. Shanahan's always kind of liked very aggressive, fly around defensive coordinators. So because of that, a lot of the defensive coordinators he hired play very aggressive schemes with a lot of missed tackles. That's just kind of how he wants it.
So what's the issue with the 49ers here, Mike? Because they're 2-3.
Well, Brock Purdy does have 4 interceptions in 5 games, and his passer rating is down in like the high 90s when it was like close to 110. Last year. I know passer rating is a dumb stat to use in 2024, but I think that's a good illustration of how the regression has happened there. He's going to get $60 million a year, and that's going to drive me crazy when that happens. So,
well,
part of it's on Purdy.
Time out. Let's relax on the Brock Purdy hate because this whole conversation will turn into a Brock Purdy argument because Brock Purdy is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he's not top. Where are my rankings at? I got him at like 13. I think that's a good
come on, Mike. 13 is ridiculous. He led the NFL in every single stat last year. You can't call the guy who led the NFL in quarterback rating, QBR, yards per pass attempt, air yards per attempt, yards per completion. He led the NFL in almost every single quarterback metric. You can't rank him 13th. Stop.
Steven Ruiz had him 16th. I'm better.
Stupid.
I think he had him in the 20s for most of that.
Okay, so we're just disdisregarding stats. Stats don't mean anything.
We're not disregarding stats, but that is disregarding. That's a murder machine as an offense.
If me and 20 people just ran right now a race and I came in first, you know why I came in first? Because my time said that. My time said I can't. But then you guys come in the rankings and go, yeah, but he was actually the 16th best runner.
Because you had a jetpack. And now you don't have.
I didn't say how fast the people were that I was racing against. The point is, my time said I was the fastest, and then you guys come with the power rankings. Yeah, but he was actually the 13th best runner. Even though that right there says quite literally, objectively, he was the best runner. No, he's actually 13th because that's what I said.
Well, Sam Darnold, like a top 10 quarterback, he's got 11 touchdowns.
How can you call a guy who every metric, not just one, Mike? You can look at every quarterback metric last year. He led the NFL, and you're going to rank him 13th?
Quarterback on easy mode. In that offense.
Perfect. Okay, then if that's the case, then just sign some other bum off the street. Then why even have Brock Purdy? If it's just
why I think that? Because people had Jimmy G ranked not that high, but close. He left, immediately turned back into a pumpkin.
Okay, then we need to stop. You know what? All this money we're giving to quarterbacks, we need to stop giving them quarterbacks and give them to the best offensive coordinators. If a quarterback can play that well and it's just the system, then stop paying quarterbacks, and they don't matter. Let's just go pay money to offensive coordinators and create a really good system around them.
Hey, I've been banging in 2024 football, scheme matters more than ever now. I've been banging that for years. But actually, what's wrong with the 49ers, Brock Purdy debate aside, on top of the fact that whatever you think of him, he hasn't been as good as he was last year. You could rank him wherever you want. There's been a regression from last year. On top of that, the defense is part of it. They came into the year banged up, like Talanoa Hufanga was just back recently. They don't have Dre Greenlaw. Brandon Staley is in now, which I think is he's not the nominal defensive coordinator, but he has a lot of power over there. So I just don't think that that's a great hire. I know he's a good defensive coordinator with the Rams, but I think he got lucky with Aaron Donald. And part of it, honestly, like, let's be honest here, is like they got some bad breaks at inopportune times. I'm not going to use this as a referendum on Kyle Shanahan as a coach. I think the world of Kyle Shanahan as a coach. I think honestly, it's just down to bad luck. Like, they're scoring points. They have a top 8 offense and a top 9 defense in terms of points scored, points allowed. And yet they're 2-3. Now you could point that down to, well, coaching's not there. I'm like, well, I just think that they haven't played well in the clutch, which is not something you could really put a number to. You can't really put a metric to. And I get that, but I see with San Francisco. I think things will turn around because they have.
So you think it's just variance at the end of the day?
It's just
the cruel mistress of the NFL.
It's one of those things where, like, there's no reason they should be 2-3. Like, they'll figure it out eventually. Do you think San Francisco is going to go 7-10? Like, they're gonna figure it out.
I mean, they are still favored to make the playoffs. -165, which is, I mean, what? I'm not good at in my head translating that to implied probability, but -165 is they still have a 62% chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they'll be okay. Now, if McCaffrey was back, I bet you one of these games at least a win, and then they're 3-2, and nobody's really. And I know Jordan Mason's been good, but he can't bring what McCaffrey brings to an offense.
All right. Last thing before we just really quickly, I would just want to just touch on the Giants here before we get to previewing tonight's game. Are the New York Giants a good football team, Mike?
No.
My opinion has actually started to shift after yesterday.
They had a very good game yesterday, but teams have very good games all the time that aren't particularly good. They have a very good defensive line. I think that's obvious.
Fair.
With Kayvon and Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns. One of the best in the NFC. I think that's fair. They
lead the NFL in sacks right now.
A superstar receiver in Neighbors. And I think
it was good
they were able to win without Neighbors because they literally, the first couple games of the year, the only way they were moving the ball was throwing to him. So I think that was encouraging. Daniel Jones has been better of late, especially compared to him. My problem is looking back at those games, I think that was the least daring, especially the Cowboys game in particular. I mean, they're not trying anything with him. It is get the ball, boom, 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 out. Get it, boom, 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 out. Like, they're not letting him hold the ball a lot. They're not trusting him to really do full field reads. It's a lot of one step short. I mean, for a while, it took a while for them to even have a wide receiver make a catch in that game. I think Slayton had most of the wide receiver production. It was all backs and tight ends. And I get that he's limited, and they know he's limited. They've said as much on American network television that they think Daniel Jones is limited. So I get that they have to work around it, but that way, how they're winning right now, you could get guys for 2-3 games. I don't think it's sustainable for 18 games. Like, I still don't think they're better than Washington, obviously. I don't think they're better than Dallas. I don't think they're better than Philly. So where does that leave them?
I think the Giants might be an average team, which is better than I thought they were going to be heading into the season. I'm looking at right now the EPA per play chart, and it is like on offense, it's the y-axis is rush EPA per play, x-axis is drop back EPA per play. They're a little down on the y-axis, so a little bit of a below average rushing team, but completely average passing team. And then defense, they're right in the middle. Like, they're literally the definition of average. They are right at the intersection of the y-axis and x-axis. So they are, I think maybe, I mean, I was heading into the season looking at them as the bottom 5 team. Maybe I should just look at them as like the 16th ranked team in the NFL, which is still not great, still not playoffs, but that's better than probably how I evaluated them.
Like, I value them that low because I thought Daniel Jones was just going to melt down this year, and he hasn't, to his credit. But anybody, even if you like Daniel Jones more than most, like he's very limited. Like I still think this is going to be his last year with the Giants. I'll give the Giants credit in that I think they have made themselves a very attractive destination for a veteran quarterback. Yeah. Let's say the Vikings end up wanting to go with JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold kind of has his pick of wherever. I think a guy like him could look at a team like the Giants who have neighbors. Their offensive line is better, much better actually than it has been in past years. They got kind of a running game sometimes. Defense is good. You can go, you know what? I'll head there for like 3 years. Only one of those Baker Mayfield, Geno Smithy deals. I'll head over there. And I think that's a compliment to Joe Schoen.
10P Kids says, let's see how the Giants do in primetime next week at home against the worst D in the league. Yeah, they play the Bengals Sunday Night Football next week.
They gotta flex that game, right?
Can you flex games this early in the season?
I think you can. Commanders Ravens is what I would put on there.
Yeah, I mean, if you can switch it, yeah. I don't think you can flex this early in the season. I thought that was just for later weeks, but maybe I'm wrong.
Week 5 is when it starts.
Oh, really? Okay, there you go then.
I could be totally wrong about that, but that's what I think.
Yeah, I don't know either, so. But let's talk about tonight's primetime football game. It is the Saints and the Chiefs. Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites. Total set of 43.5. Overall thoughts on this game, Mike?
This game is going to be, I think, an exercise in frustration because the fans who want to see the Chiefs get taken down a notch and they want to see Derek Carr kind of show that he's more than Saints Derek Carr, like maybe turn back the clock to Raiders Derek Carr, who I think was a better quarterback. I don't think that's going to happen. On the road, Monday night, Arrowhead. Tough situation for any team, especially a team that started off just blazing hot and is completely cooled off in the last 2 weeks in New Orleans. And for the Chiefs, I think the Saints got a pretty good defense, all things considered. I like some of the pieces New Orleans has on defense. I don't think this is really the get-right game for them. There's going to be no Rashee Rice. Obviously, Hollywood Brown's gone. Who are they throwing to? Who's going to be their big, like Kelsey maybe, but Kelsey, we know what's been going on with him. I think this is going to be his last year in the NFL. I don't think that he's playing like the Travis Kelsey of old.
Did you watch his new TV show that just came out?
You know I didn't, Iain.
I opened up my Hulu app and his face was staring at me for a preview for the first episode of his new show.
His face is everywhere.
Everywhere.
We'll peel back the curtain. I live close to Philly. You can't go to any grocery store without seeing him and Jason's face on everything.
Yeah, it's enough.
They got cereal and everything. I'm like, all right, I get it. They're popular. But, yeah, if the over-under is 43.5, I might take the under on that. I think it's going to be an old-school slobber knocker because Patrick Mahomes, like, I know he's going to be the best quarterback pretty much emeritus unless he keeps this up and Lamar keeps going crazy because, you can just flash the rings in your face. But he has not been Patrick Mahomes. Now, part of that's not his fault. No receivers, Matt Nagy, overly conservative. Teams hanging back because they don't want him to go over the top. So not all his fault, but I don't think this is really a get-right game. Even though it's at home, I think this is going to be another, 18 of 31, 200-yard kind of Mahomes game. I'm not expecting 350 and 3 touchdowns.
10P Kids agrees with you. He says, low-scoring game. Saints have a great shot. Mahomes has not been great this year. And we were talking about earlier, and we've talked about actually several times in the show about games that are basically coin flip games that come down to 1 or 2 plays, kind of deciding where teams sit right now. There are a lot of teams with records whose records could look very differently if 1 or 2 plays went their way or went against them earlier this season. And I think the Chiefs are an example of and this is why I personally hate the Chiefs, because it's been like this for a number of seasons now. Every single coin flip game, weird thing happens. It just always goes in their favor. Isaiah Likely's toenail was on the line in week 1. Week 2, there is the pass interference, which was called, rightfully so. It was the pass interference, but it went their way. Week 3, there was a call that should have been pass interference on the Chiefs for my Falcons, and it did not get called. That went their way. And then last week against the Chargers, they won. There probably wasn't that one big play that flipped it. But it was also a very close game that could have gone either way by the end of it. So the Chiefs are 4-0. I know they have Patrick Mahomes. I know they have the back-to-back. They're the back-to-back Super Bowl defending champions. When you look at just this team right now, just the 2024 NFL season, the Saints are one of the most fraudulent teams in the NFL. I don't think they're good. They haven't played well. I want to say that because I'm not going to discount them because then they're going to go on and win the Super Bowl probably. The way they have not played good football yet this season is what I'm trying to say. Even though they're 4-0, they have not played well. You look at most metrics, average. Yards per play, they're 16th. Opponent yards per play, they're around that too. EPA, their numbers are actually a little bit better because they do make those big key plays and big moments. Yeah, how about the Falcons convert on 4th and 1 and stop complaining about the missed EPI? I agree. And I was vocal about that after the game. The Falcons still had chances to win that game, and they didn't deliver. They ran a stretch play on 4th and 1. Yes, you're right. But the fact of the matter is, and Chiefs fans will not admit to this, but if it happened to any other teams, the Chiefs would be screaming the same thing from the mountaintops. As a non-Chiefs fan, when I watch Chiefs games, it seems like almost every single week there is a weird play that happens and it's always in their favor. Isaiah Likely's toenail was on and these are things that like other teams should be able to like overcome and win anyways, but they don't. So I mean, it is what it is though.
They're looking more Patriots dynasty by the minute. I have a rule.
Exactly. It is the exact same thing as the Patriots for 20 years who continue to fight. Like, I remember that there was a game against the Chargers and there was a kickoff and all the Chargers had to do was not fumble the kick return and they would have won, and they fumbled the kick return and the Patriots scored like 2 plays later. It's the
playoff game where Brady gets picked and then they fumble the interception return.
Exactly. It's the same type of things are now happening to the Chiefs. So
I think
what happened was a couple. No, because I don't know if it's Tom Brady or if it's the Chiefs. So I don't know if it's Tom Brady or if it's Patrick Mahomes. There is a deal with the devil made that then was transferred from Tom Brady and the Patriots over to the Chiefs when Tom Brady retired, and I'm getting sick of it, guys. It's enough.
Here's my new rule. You have to retire when you win 3 Super Bowls. So Mahomes gets 3. He's done. You figured out. You figured out football. Good for you. Let's let somebody else have it. Let's let Lamar Jackson get 1. Let's let Josh Allen get 1. There are 3. I don't want to say 7. He's gonna get. They're gonna probably get to Super Bowls here, and they're not even that good. I don't think. I mean, the defense is good, but I think this is a worse team than last year. And last year was a flawed team that had to squeak by in most of their playoff games. This team has some. Do you know what it reminds me of? I think I got the comparison. Do you remember the year? I think it was the COVID year. The Steelers started off like 11-0 with Ben Roethlisberger. Everybody knew they were bad, but they kept winning somehow.
But they're even worse than this Chiefs team. They were like statistically like a bottom 5 team. They sucked.
And then they were 11-0 because of Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, and then I think Washington beat them like Thanksgiving or something. Washington beat them on like a Thursday. On like
a Wednesday, I remember.
Wednesday, yeah, it was a weird day game. Washington beat them, yeah.
Alex Smith on his 1/3 of a leg. I think that's who beat him. But
yeah, Matthew says I have bad news. It's going to continue for another 10 years. I know it is, which is why it's so frustrating. If I knew this was going to be a 1-year thing, I wouldn't care.
You're not.
And also to go back to your stop complaining about the missed DPI. If the game against the Bengals, if they didn't call the DPI on the Bengals, you would have been complaining about the missed DPI. So let's
Your team's not in the AFC. Imagine how I feel.
Yeah,
you got to beat them to even get there.
Yep.
And one team has gotten there in the last 5 years. That's the Bengals. And even that was kind of fluky.
Yeah, and we suffered our loss to the Chiefs. So now I guess we could potentially see the Chiefs again, depending on how the divisions shake out with the extra game. But now we don't have to see the Chiefs for a while, which is going to be nice, hopefully.
And the sad part, though, too, is like obviously I like watching Patrick Mahomes play football. Everybody does when he's at the peak of his career. I think that's what I'm trying to wrestle with. Other than just the fact I hate the Patriots too, because Patriots Jets, like because Brady wasn't like he was as good as he was, but he wasn't as exciting. I think just style wise, it just felt like it was almost like the military. It was like very soulless and joyless, and we just crushed guys 31-14. Like the Chiefs, I almost kind of want to be better because when Mahomes is cooking. And he's chucking it deep, and Xavier Worthy or whoever the speedy guy du jour is of the day, running under it. Like it's fun to watch. But when it's this, it just feels very fluky and ticky-tacky, and you're like, how do they keep getting away with this?
I agree. And I mean, look no further than their record against the spread over the past 3 seasons, where they're around 500 when it comes to covering the spread. That is a sign to me that they're not winning these games by a lot, because they're a favorite in almost every single game, and they only cover in about half of them. So if they're winning these games more handedly and decisively, then I'd just be bowing at the knees of the Chiefs and just giving them their credit. But when every single bounce goes your way, it's frustrating to watch. Let's wrap up the show, Mike. On Monday, we always give it our favorite touchdown scores for the Monday night game. Speaking of the Chiefs, we just crapped all over them and how much we hate them. We're both picking a member of the Chiefs to score tonight, though.
I'm picking Xavier Worthy, and I know I just said that Xavier Worthy is probably not – it's not going to be like a 150-yard game, but with everybody hurt and with Kelsey still not Kelsey, for lack of a better word, old, not dare I say washed, dare I say careful. He's got his mind on non-football activities.
Careful.
Which is, you know what? Understandable for a guy in that position. I don't blame you, Travis Kelsey. But I think they're honestly just going to force feed Worthy. I think this might be like a Worthy breakout game if there's a good chance of it, just because he's the only really guy they got that's got any juice at the receiver position. And the Saints have a good secondary. I get that. And Dennis Allen's a defensive coach. I get that. But for better or worse, I think that the Chiefs have to at least try. As someone in chat said, Justin Watson has to have great odds. I could see just like a fluky 30-yard down the sideline, Justin Watson open one. I'm more likely, if I'm a betting man, to put money on Xavier Worthy in this game.
Yeah, and the reason why I think the way to go is to bet on a member of the Chiefs, because actually, if you look at the Saints and you look at the targets, only 3 players have seen more than I think 6 targets for the Chiefs or for the Saints so far this season. It's Kamara, Olave, and Rashid Shaheed. So betting on anyone else to score a touchdown on the Saints offense is kind of worthless because they don't go to anyone else.
No Taysom Hill either in this game.
What's that?
No Taysom
Hill. Yeah, exactly. No Taysom Hill either. So you can go with like a Juwan Johnson, but once again, he's had like a small handful of targets. So I think if you're going to bet touchdown scores, I think the value is to go with the Chiefs, as 10P Kid said. And I did consider Justin Watson. Justin Watson right now, plus 285. Xavier Worthy, Mike, plus 150. I'm going further down the odds list here. I'm going to go Noah Gray to score plus 450. Tight end with obviously no Rashee Rice. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of run with more 2 tight end sets. Maybe put Kelsey out at slot receiver. Put Noah Gray from the tight end position. A plus 450 with an offense that Patrick Mahomes is going to be forced to spread the ball around. I'll take it. He's had some catches this year.
It's a shame that Mahomes has to be saddled with Matt Nagy of all like that. You ever see that meme of the Bugatti and then there's like a tin roof above it? That's Mahomes. It's taking that car and then you go to do grocery shopping. You don't do that with a Maserati.
I agree.
So watch, man.
I agree. Really quick, who covers? Chiefs or Saints? Chiefs 5.5. Who covers? I think Saints cover, Chiefs win once again. I think it's going to be like a 20-17 win for the Chiefs.
I'm going to say the Chiefs cover.
Oh,
only because I feel like there's going to be I think 23 points or something like that might be a fair estimation for the Chiefs. I think that's perfectly fine.
All right.
I don't trust Derek Carr against a very good Chiefs defense. Derek Carr with basically 2 offensive weapons. I think Olave and Kamara. Rashid Shaheed might be good for a 50-yard bomb, but other than that, he's not a very complex receiver. I don't know if they're going to get into a shootout with Patrick Mahomes and this defense. I know that their offensive line is banged up, and now they have to go against Chris Jones. Steve Spagnuolo could take you and turn you into a borderline Pro Bowl cornerback, so they always have a secondary that is worth a damn. I think this might be tough sledding for the Saints. And honestly, this is 2 straight weeks in a row where offensively they disappointed me. So they're on probation until proven otherwise. And they could get off it by beating the Chiefs, but I don't think they do.
All right. That's the show. Mike, thank you so much for hopping on and filling in for Sterling once again. Let the people know where they can find your work.
You can find me at @ByMikeLuciano on Twitter, and I am all over the Fansided Network on all the NFL sites. I'm kind of bouncing around there, so feel free to check them out. I'm sure you'll find one of my stuff there, and hope I make you happy with your articles. Apparently not a lot of people, but based on my Twitter mentions, but maybe things will turn around. Who knows?
I'm going to read the tweet I received yesterday. This guy was angry at me for picking the Bills to beat the Texans. He said, hey, you woke, ignorant POS. How'd that Texans-Bills predictions work out for you? You should never be allowed to talk pro football again. # Trump 2024.
Well, you heard him. Hey, bosses, if you're listening, this guy on Twitter, I think, has like 10 random numbers in his username. He's making decisions. He's calling the shots now. So
yeah.
Sorry, Iain. I like doing the show with you, but that's how I said so. Oh well.
Just tossing in the # Trump 2024 is perfect.
All right, that makes it more valid that he did that. Like it's like, oh, now I have to really take this dummy seriously.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe to Stacking the Box on YouTube. Rate and review if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast. Sign up for Underdog Fantasy using the promo code Stacking the Box. All one word, Stacking the Box. We'll be back Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Sterling, I believe, will be back by then, and we'll be previewing all the games for Week 6 of the NFL season. Talk to you then.